Wait.
Sorry, Fuzzer. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Stately Office Hours. Things are getting chaotic up in here, apparently. This is where us, the team at Stately, tell you everything that we've been working on with Stately and with X-State. There we go. Kevin's back now. We'll start as we do every week. We'll just intro the team that we have here with you today. I'm Laura. I do advocacy, education, other things for Stately. David.
Hey, I'm the founder of Stately, creator of X-State. As always.
Farzad.
Hey, I'm Farzad and I do engineering at Stately.
And Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm doing Stately.
And Nick.
And I'm Nick, and I do product design at Stately.
And as you can see today, Farzad and I are dressed as the Stately UI, particularly the buttons. I'm the upgrade button, just as a reminder for you to upgrade. So we've got loads to share with you this week. We've had so many releases recently that we've actually got things that we weren't able to cover in the last office hours because we had so much to share with you that we need to catch up on. So I thought we would start off, David. Could we tell everyone about the new export formats that we have available to our pro users?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen if I could find it. And this is one that I'm excited about because it goes beyond just using state machines for code and instead using state machines to really communicate with your team. So, because Stately, our goal is to have this be a collaborative team tool. And so in order to do that, you have to also make it accessible to people who might not be developers. And this kind of thing is actually useful for developers as well. I'll stop babbling. But yeah, so in this example, I have a very simple drag and drop machine, which, by the way, this was automatically, we'll show that later, but this was automatically generated with Generate Flow. I just wanted a very simple machine that shows the flow of dragging and dropping an item. You could see that we could cancel, reset. And this is fine, having a state machine at this size, but sometimes the machine could get unwieldy and it could get really big, and you really need different formats in order to be able to read through it, explain the different parts without having to zoom in and out like Google Maps. So now if you go to code, you're going to see a few more options, and I'm not sure if you could see the drop down over here, but I'll just verbally describe it. We, of course, have JavaScript, TypeScript, JSON, Mermaid in beta, Markdown in beta, and now Stories in beta. So we talked about Mermaid, I don't know if it was last time or a couple office hours ago, but I wanted to show you this beta Markdown feature. And we're going to be adding a lot of cool things to this, including a Markdown preview. But this actually generates Markdown for each of the states, events, and transitions, and also actions and descriptions, invocations, anything else that you could add to the canvas. We could go ahead and copy this code, and then you could view it in your favorites or second favorite. I don't know which Markdown viewer you use, but in Markdown viewer. And okay, this officially became not my favorite, so I'm going to use something else. I'm going to use Dillinger.io. Yeah, okay. So you could also post this directly on GitHub, of course, as a comment, or even in a Markdown file for people to view. And if I zoom in a little bit here, the structure is that we have the name of the machine, and we have each of the states with a quoted description of each state if you provide that description. And then we have each of the transitions. So for example, you could see clearly that on start drag, we transition to drag and drop dots dragging. Now, if you view this in GitHub, this will actually scroll to the proper link. So it actually becomes sort of a cheap simulation mode because you could click here and then it will scroll. So it just shows each of these. You could get, into nested states, the longer descriptions. In fact, this will render the Markdown descriptions that you have too in here. Another Markdown format that we have is stories. Now, stories are a little bit different in that with a story is basically a path through the machine. So if you want to know, like in this simple example, how do we get to the dropped states? Then we could actually just show it step by step. We could see that when we start, we're in the drag and drop idle states. And when start drag happens, now we're in the drag and drop dot dragging state. And then when we release, we're in the drag and drop dot drop states. I realize that that might not be the best example. So let me just go ahead and find one. I have some AI generated flows here. Ooh, this is a fun one. So I actually was modeling, or AI was modeling, the get bisect flow, just because I thought that that was pretty interesting. So if we export that as a story, and I copy that over to Dillinger, we see like, okay, how can we get to the revert failed states? Well, when you start your get bisect flow and the start get bisect event happens, if you find a good commit and then the revert commit event happens, then eventually the revert failed event happens, you will get to the revert failed state. So it's a nice step-by-step process. You could use this for testing, but we are going to be showing off some more advanced testing exports in the future. So long story short, you could use Stately as a way to document your flows automatically by just exporting them to Markdown or to stories.
I love the idea of using the Markdown one to create a choose your own adventure story. I think you could do that really easily with that. It would be really cool. John says, I put a mermaid diagram into a PR for the first time yesterday. David, could you just preview the mermaid preview while you've got it open?
Hopefully this works. Oh,
there we go. It looks good.
Yeah. So this is the mermaid diagram. You can go to things that render mermaids, such as mermaid.live, and just paste it in there. And you should be able to zoom in on this. And also in GitHub, you should be able to do it as well. It's not going to look nearly as good, in my opinion, as Stately Studio. However, this is still very useful if, for example, you want to post it as a comment somewhere. So I could just do triple tick mermaid, and I know you can't read that. I'll zoom in a bit. But now if I preview over here, you could see that right in your GitHub, your GitHub comments, you could zoom in, you could pan, because GitHub and GitLab natively supports Mermaid. So we wanted to make it as easy of an experience as possible to take the state machines you create and copy paste them in here. Of course, you could also just take a screenshot and show that, or better yet, copy a link to here. You could always share this as a link, make it either public, unlisted, or private. Obviously, only if it's public or unlisted will you be able to share it anywhere. And then people could just see this.
You could also copy the SVG next to the preview.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes, you could definitely do that. So if you go here to preview, you could right click. I know you can't see that, but oh yeah, just kidding. You could copy the SVG. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's an SVG viewer, but
oh, there we go.
Not valid.
Nope.
That's okay. But I'm sure it works in other things other than this tool. But yeah.
It definitely works if you paste it in your HTML. I tested that. Trust me.
Yeah. It's whatever that SVG viewer is, that's for sure.
Yes.
So if we stick along the lines of our latest new pro features, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to show you the update that we have got to generating flows. Let's just check that that's going to help us if I share it. There we go. So here's one I generated earlier. Now, if I go to this unlocked machine, we'll look at locked machines a little bit later. You can see we now have a slightly different icon on our generate flow button. And if we go to generate flow, we have a whole new UI here. Let's zoom in a touch there. And now we've made it a little clearer that right now this will generate from the current flow. And you can toggle that off if you want to generate a new flow entirely. I'm going to generate a new flow entirely. Any ideas for what we should generate today? Live dangerously. Okay, I'm going to generate a flow for a live stream with an intro, 3 demos, and a preview of features coming soon. Let's see what it makes of this. Now I'm hitting generate. David's actually been working on some updates recently that will make this even speedier and more successful as well. And of course, you can actually generate real app logic rather than daft machines based on things that you're currently doing.
Yeah, we could try this next. John asked, what if you ask it to model a choose your own adventure story?
Oh, that's a great idea. And here that we got a flow. It was very quick. If I zoom in a little bit on there, you can see that it starts with an intro. We can skip the intro and go straight to starting demos. I think some people would like that, wouldn't they? As this has generated a really nice flow. And if we then want to modify that flow, we can go back in and we can generate from the current flow and add in what we want to modify about that flow.
How about
the other big up? Okay,
so
we'll modify.
I was going to suggest, how about a section for questions and answers? That seems to be missing.
Great idea. Add a section for questions and answers. Gosh, I'm able to type today. That's unusual. And I was going to tell you all about this little view history button we have here. So previously, when you generated a flow, the prompt that you used, the description that you used, will be shown in the version history, but that was quite hard to get a hold of. And so now when you go to view history, you'll be able to see a list of the prompts. We'll just wait for this to generate. There we go. Oh, I can see it. It has modified our machine and we now have a questions and answers section.
Nice.
And once you finish the questions, you get to the end. So that's generated really well. So if I just pop back here to generate flow and view the history, now you can see that this was my original machine that I generated, an onboarding flow, and then I'd modified it. And then I made the prompted for the live stream with an intro, and then I modified it with adding a section. Now this is really useful because a lot of the time you want to remember what your successful generations were, but also you might want to do the same flow again, but adjust it slightly. And in that case, I can do things like copying to prompt, and it will pre-fill the text description with that prompt, and you can add anything more to it that you want to. So maybe in there, I would have said, include a section for questions and answers. And so that is our new UI for generating flows. What was the one that John suggested? Model a choose your own adventure story. Let's just try that one then quickly.
This will be fun.
Choose your own adventure story. I mean, should we actually specify the story? That would make it a bit more interesting, wouldn't it?
Sure.
The story, see what it's going to do, is a pirate story where you are searching for treasure. I cannot type to save my life. There we go.
Could get really creative with this.
Yeah, and then we can export that to Markdown as well.
Yeah.
Then we'll have the framework for the clickable choose your own adventure story.
While this is loading, I'll explain some of the upcoming improvements. So we're doing a lot of complex, I guess you could call it prompt engineering, but we are going to make it faster, first of all. Secondly, we're going to make it basically in the back end, choose the best. So it's going to generate a couple of different responses, and it's going to basically use some heuristics to choose which one is the best. So you're going to end up with an accurate machine almost every time. And also, when you modify a machine, it's going to be able to recover from errors a lot better. So you're going to get correct machines more often than not.
So here we go. We have a really exciting pirate adventure story.
Wow, this is...
I love this. So you do have an option from right to the start, going straight to the end. But you found a treasure map. You need to decide whether to follow it or not. Follow or ignore. If we follow the treasure map, we can go to the treasure island. You arrived at the treasure island. You need to decide whether to search for the treasure or not. And if you search for the treasure, you find the treasure. If you leave the island, you encounter the pirate captain, and you need to decide whether to fight or surrender. And if you surrender, it's game over. This is brilliant. Oh, I could. Oh, and
I want to see a Dungeons and Dragons generator on top of this.
Yeah. Oh, imagine we can add in the images as well that would be coming soon. That would be a very cool feature to have.
That was awesome.
So there we go. That is what a great suggestion. Thank you, John. So what do I have next up on the list? Oh, yes. So all of those features that we've shown you already today are pro features. So that would be export to Markdown, export to stories, and generating flows as well. And we've made a big change this week that means that all the viewer roles have free access to a team. So basically that means that if you add people as viewers to your team, you require, like, teams are part of the pro feature, then those won't count towards your seats. So hopefully if you've got lots of people that want to join in and be able to see what you're building, but don't necessarily want to edit your machines, you can just assign them the viewer role. So let us know what you think about that. I think that's a really great feature, and it helps you bring more of your team on board, and you're not having to worry about that counting towards the monthly or yearly price as well. So let's go to something else new and exciting. Faza, do you want to tell us about the event schema, which is now available in the studio?
Sure. So let me quickly.
Don't sound too positive about it.
No, it's just I had a sequence of things to demo, and event schema was right in the middle.
Okay.
Let me know if you see my screen.
I can see your screen. Shall I add it? No, there you go. You got
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since I demoed anything on office hours, so I'm going to be a little rusty. Anyway,
would you zoom in a little bit, please? Is that all right? If you could just zoom the
sure.
browser. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Great. So we've been recently thinking about introducing, like, as a part of bringing like Exastate API parity to Studio. It's been like a really long sort of series of features that we wanted to introduce, and part of that was bringing schemas, because the schemas will guarantee type safety when you generate the code out of diagrams in Studio. So they play a critical role in working with diagrams and state machines in Studio. So we definitely wanted them to be a part of the Studio. Therefore, we worked on the first part, which is events schema. And it's probably one of the most used schemas that you can use with Exastate, right? I think events are even more often used than context, in a sense.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. Because the transitions are a core part of the state machines. Anyway, so event schema works. You can find them under the machine details. If you don't have anything selected on the canvas, they're going to appear under the machine details. You're going to see all the events here. You'll be able to search between them, but you need to understand that this is just a schema for the event. It's equivalent to the schema.events in Exastate code, where you describe the type of the like the event type and all the data that the event will carry. One nice touch that we added was when you initialize a state machine, when you load the machine, when you load the page, we will go through all the events that we can find in the machine, and we will add them as like add an empty schema to them, so they appear in the schema. So your schema and your like diagram in the state machine are actually kept in sync, and that's true about all the updates. If you edit your events, the edits are going to be reflected in the schema as well. If you delete something, we will try to detect if this is the last event that was containing the schema. If yes, we will delete it from the schema. Otherwise, we will still keep it. And if you add a new event and it's already not in the schema, we will of course add it to the schema. Because it's frustrating if the events schema and the actual events on the canvas get out of sync. You can look through your events by searching their names. You can freely add all the events you want to the schema. And because the ones that are not used are going to be dimmed out, and I'm going to show you that like real quick here. For example, let's say that I have key.escape, an event that comes a DOM event.
Mm-hmm.
You can add descriptions, and every event, of course, has a type property, and you can add like 1 million of payloads to them, basically. Let's say that this escape comes with a meta key, and that's a Boolean. And then I want to create this. But this is not used in the state machine because I have only 2 events, next and back. Therefore, we dim it out here. So you have a quick indication, quick visual indication of what's being used in the diagram and what's not used. You also have like a really helpful button down here where you can go and delete all the unused events. So if you have like loads of events that are unused in the machine, you can just quickly remove them. Imagine that you're in VS Code and you have one of those quick fix options where you delete all the unused events in the machine. What else? You can, of course, like add more schemas. There's also something here that I really love where you add like a, we can add multiple events at once to just keep you in the flow. You can just add them, one by one. There's a little bug here that the description is kept, but like we're fixing that. And then the existing events in the schema can be, of course, edited. Let's say that I have a Boolean property here, and yeah, that's it. So this schema is for the back event. And if I go and select the back event in the canvas and open the back event details here, I would still be able to see it's a schema. And you can, of course, like change the schema however you want, and this will be synced with the other view of the event schema. You can also export to TypeScript. Event schema is going to be only available in the exported code to TypeScript because they're part of the TypeScript typings. So we have the next event here, the back event, but you can see that the payload of the event, which was the bool of a type number, is already in the type. So when you paste this inside VS Code or somewhere else that you're developing, you already get the type safety out of your diagrams. I'm also working on the next part of the schemas, which are context schema, and I can tease that off my local host, Laura. The context schema is very, very much a work in progress right now, so there's going to be a lot of bugs here. But they're going to appear on top of events schema. Now, ideally, we will merge context schema with the context values here. But for now, we're just, as a proof of concept, we're going to keep them here next to event schema. They basically have the same drill. You can add new context properties, but context properties are not objects like events. So they can have different types. Let's say that I have a username that's the type of string, and I have an age for the user that's a type of number, and I have basically a bunch of items as an array. So I can see all of them here. I'll be able to go through them and edit them if I want. I can be able to delete all of them, search through them, and they will also appear in the exported TypeScript code. So we'll see that the username has a type of string, age has a type of number, and items are a list of unknown types for now. We don't support recursive object types or elements of the array for now, but I mean, I'm assuming that they'll be coming soon in future. Mm-hmm. Also, we don't yet have a good way of detecting what's being used inside context assignments. So if you have assigned actions in Studio, we don't yet connect them to the context schema, but they're going to also be coming very soon because I worked on another part that I'm going to talk about right now that allows part of the foundation for that thing to happen. So in future, you can imagine the Studio will show you a list of, it will auto suggest a list of available events and available properties in the context if you're writing an action implementation in the Studio. If you type like assign and then open the parentheses, if you're writing the expression, you will get like a list of TypeScript suggestions, for example, like a TypeScript sort of intelligent suggestion based on the available context properties and events in the schema. Or we would be able to do some smart stuff like validate if a schema like property is like I mean, if something is inside your context and you have like a number that has initial value of 2, but it's missing from the schema, we will give you like quick action buttons to be able to just sync a schema with the actual context values, or we will be able to validate and warn you if there's something that's missing inside one of the assignments from the schema, like you're assigning to A of type number, but actually in the schema there's a mismatch because A was defined as a type of string, and things like that. But one thing that will allow that is something that I've been working on for the past month, and that's the like we've been refactoring the way we store your machine actions. So you can have actions as entry actions and state nodes. You can have exit actions. You can have invocation actions, and you can have transition actions in exit state. If you have those actions here, we used to we used to support like inline actions and XSA built-in actions, but the support was very primitive and basic. But we've been working on a way to store actions such that it allows for scaling actions to support all of those variants in addition to future integration. Let's say that you want to have a package for sending emails to Gmail and you want to share that across project for all the machines, and you're defining that in a certain way. So you should be able to use like a sort of a template to save those actions, and we should be able to like autocomplete on the action properties. But for all of that to happen and all of the schema stuff to happen as well in the future, we were working on this sort of refactor on the actions, the way that our open source machine extractor works, and the way that the studio accepts these actions. So just to give you a very quick demo of what I mean, this will fix most of the problems that we had with inline expressions before and the future integration between the Web Studio and the VS Code. I want to import a machine that only has a root state, and this root state has a very long entry action. It's a list of all the actions. I've been trying to save all these sort of variants of expressions that you can inside your state machine, like an arrow function, any variable, built-in XState actions that are not supported in the studio, like forward to, respond, escalate, pure, choose, and of course built-in actions that are supported, like assign. But like assign actions could have different variations. They could be a callback. They could have an object. Each of those object properties could have, a callback or a primitive value. There's just a ton of ways that we need to support actions, like log expressions, send to actions. For now, we only support stop, send to, assign, log, and raise events in the UI. And the rest of the things, if you build the rest of the built-in actions from XSA, we're going to extract them and show them as inline expression. They're not going to be editable. Only these 5 that I mentioned are going to be editable through the UI. The rest are not editable yet until we have time to actually extract them in a meaningful way. If I go on and hit import, it's going to talk to the server and import everything. But the UI now is smart enough to detect that this assignment had a callback, and the callback is an expression, so it shows you the expression in a great way. And it will work the same way when you export to code. You will see the same expression here. If I look for that expression here, you can see that this is the actual expression. So this is the code that you can paste inside like a code sandbox or a Stackblade or your VS Code, and it will just work. You can interpret it using XState in your runtime. We understand all the expressions, inline expressions, variables, built-in XState actions that we don't support yet, but the ones that we support, like for example, this assign had an object. These had values that you can edit, but this one is an expression. And expressions, for introducing expressions and trying to, being smart about it and extract them to export to code, we have an official way that we haven't, I don't think we have educated users yet.
Not
Laura,
yet.
have we? Not yet, yeah.
No.
But expressions are basically wrapped in doubly curly braces right now in XState. I can't really zoom enough to show you, maybe. Yeah, but these are the values. Anything that needs to be an expression in the studio needs to be wrapped inside doubly curly braces. This is for you as an indication to tell us that this is an expression, so we need to be smart about that. And of course, you can have other sorts of actions, like raise can have a callback, so it's not editable because it's a callback. But if it was an event that had a type property and event payload, those can be editable. So you can see that some event 1 will be represented inside the exported code as well. So everything should work. All of these 5 actions should work that we support, but the rest of them are just read-only extracted for now.
Couple of quick questions while you still got that open. One just about how you're doing it. John asks, are you pattern matching or did you manage to use ASTs?
So our open source machine extractor package does AST parsing. And that's the one that's responsible for extracting the code into a graph definition that the studio understands. And
earlier, just because Cedric actually had a little bit of confusion around this, I think it would be good if we can actually show him while you've got some actions open. Cedric said, I've not found how to set an action as a string, only custom or assign action. Is it still possible to do it?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, it's basically, how do you set an action with string? So it's using a custom action.
Yeah. So that's what we call named actions now. So if you want to add a named action, I can, like, for example, add an exit action that's named. And so if the action has an action type, I can call it a named action, and it could have parameters, whatever parameter you can add to the custom action.
And
But
those are
anything
the
else-
same thing as string actions. So
Yeah.
The string actions are just named actions. You can imagine them as an object that have a type property.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll help you, Cedric, having a visualization on that.
Yeah, but I think we demoed this before and showed that these are the only built-in XSS actions that are supported
Yes.
through the UI for now. So these are especially extracted. This list will be a lot longer and a lot different in future.
That's very
I think
exciting.
that's it. Yeah, that's it for now. Hopefully this
That's
allows
it.
for,
Only a load of things.
hopefully this allows for better integration with VS Code and some future secret project for now.
yes.
Oh.
All right, so a quick question.
Great.
If you create some payload for an action and then you switch to the V5, does the export wrap it in the params? Those different properties? I don't know if you
Let's
know.
find out together.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, no worries. So what do we want to test here? If you have a parameter here, like A2, and let's mark it as auto because we can detect that this is a type of number. And what do we want to see here?
And then in the export code right now, it should just have that value.
Yeah, so the parameter is a part of the, like, flattened into the same object as the action.
Oh, so it's already in the params.
Oh yeah, but this is not V5. So the V5 would have the same thing.
So it's sort of forward, like a forward anticipating way of packaging up those parameters.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I think David can confirm if this is compatible with V5.
Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be compatible. The params part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that looks good.
Great.
I have to unmute myself first. That helps. Mo asks, I have a question, but it has nothing to do with what we're seeing now. Can I ask? Yes, absolutely. Ask any questions you want at any time throughout, and we will pick them up. So ask away, and we will get back to you shortly. So next up, I mean, you thought you'd seen a lot already, but we are not even halfway through. Nick, you've been doing loads of work recently. Some of these are very small changes that have a really big impact. So would you like to share us a bit more about what you've been doing with the editor design?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Laura. I just have a quick demo today. I won't spend too long on this with everything else. But so let's see, share my screen. Okay, so I'll point out a few changes that we've made in the past couple weeks. One is the root node. So you may recall, until very recently, the root node for a machine actually had the whole border around it. This always kind of, I always thought it was kind of too much. Like, it feels like you get bounded in and you have to work in this little space. And also it just wasn't that significant. So we were thinking about ways that we could lighten the chart and kind of remove that border whenever the root isn't really doing anything. One of the challenges that we have is actually that the root is itself a state. It's not just the name of a file or something like many other tools might have it. So you need, for example, you can add actions to the root. So we needed to be able to still support that while also keeping it lighter. And so we have a few ideas for that. We have another one which we might iterate on in the future just to improve it further. But for now, what we have working is, say, whenever you first load the machine, the root is just a a kind of top border, and you can select this, and you can still do whatever you would do to a state. So, for example, if you were to add an entry action, you can still add this entry action to the root. And now, since the root is significant in the context of this machine, we now format it like a state. So it has the whole border, if you could see that. And if you were to remove the action, now it goes back to just being a label. So that's a small change that we made, but I think it has a pretty big impact on just how it feels to use the editor.
Totally does.
Yeah. While I was doing that, I revisited the canvas a little bit. Not a whole lot of changes, but just a little bit of improvements. So one is just tweaking the colors and style of the transition labels in dark mode, especially. So you can see they stand. You might not notice, it's really subtle, especially without a before and after, but they stand out a bit more from the background. That's one feedback that we got, that they blended in a little too much. Also, they have a bit more color, not a lot of color. Like, one of the challenges here is it needs to be clear what's a state and what's a transition. So we have that constraint. But given that, we have a bit more color now on the transition labels. And I don't know, just as an aside there. So on this machine, when I was playing with it, I made what is this? Is for copying from a little register machine, copying logic from one register to another. And you can see I'm using color to you have the main path in purple, and then these loops if it's decrementing, it's pink. If it's incrementing, it's green. I don't know, just kind of a neat way to use color to make a pretty confusing flow a little more intuitive. Okay, so the final thing that I wanted to show here, the final change we made, has to do with annotations. So now annotations are written directly on the canvas itself. So you could see they're no longer on their own surface. They're just on the canvas. Now you can still grab it, drag it around, and it works just like that. But another change is we now have, this is a pretty big one for Stately, we can now do rich text editing on the canvas itself. Before, you had to open up a popover, and that was always just a placeholder until we were able to get around to implementing on canvas rich text editing. But we've done this now. So now if you wanted to edit a annotation, you just select it. And then once it's selected, you can just click directly into the content and start typing. And there's no popovers. You can just, still copy and paste and do whatever you wanted there, just like you'd expect. And the way it works for now is we support many markdown shortcuts. So if you want to do a header, you can say a header, smaller header, smaller, and then with body text. And just to show one or two other things, lists. Oh, this is kind of a neat one you can test out. It's experimental, but checkboxes. So you could say, do this, then that. So you can just kind of have in context checklist for your teammates when you're collaborating. Just kind of a useful thing sometimes. And I guess finally, I'll show we do support images. Let me copy. I just copied a URL to an image. And for now, we don't yet support drag and drop to upload. We're working on that. And I always forget which one's which with Markdown, but I think it's like this. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
oh,
so
bunny.
now we have a little bunny on our chart. One more thing I'll show is links. So the way that you do links, if you say you're collaborating and you want to say this is for
Did you zoom it in just a touch?
Yeah. So I'll say this is
Perfect.
for Stately. So now I can just select Stately, paste it. Oh, did that not work? We have a bug there. That didn't work. But it did auto detect that it's a link, so then you can click on it and it would load the link. So I think that's all I wanted to show here.
Yeah, and all of that same formatting is also available in descriptions, isn't
yes,
it?
good point. It is, yes. So also descriptions now allow in context editing. It supports the same kind of thing.
That's very nice. I didn't even
Now, if
realize about
you-
the headings. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it does show the markdown in the details panel. You can see the raw markdown. So like if we were to say, this is italic, I think that is.
Bold.
And if we were to,
Most.
and so now it updated, it's showing the raw markdown here.
These underscores for italics.
Yeah, we support both. Oh, that's right. It's bold.
Nick, quick question. When you export this machine to code, do you get the markdown content?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I believe you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then it's you can just copy it into a different markdown tool.
John says, would love to be able to paste images in so I don't need to find somewhere to host it. Trust us, we are on that one. That is a big request from the team as well.
Yeah, in fact, that is what I was doing last night.
Yeah,
working on that feature. So, I don't know when it'll be released, but, we're working on that.
It's close.
Another question from John, will transition lines avoid annotations?
They will, or they'll try. Remember, the algorithm tries to avoid it as best as possible, but if it's going to be really, really snaky, then it's probably going to choose the one where it might minimally intersect some things, but it tries its best not to.
Yeah, and luckily annotations aren't connected to any states or anything like that, so you can move those around a lot more freely than you can do with your states and events. John also asks, would it be possible to export or copy the state chart as an SVG? That's a pretty cool idea, and I believe it's one that we have got that you can upvote on our feedback board. So if you would also like to export as SVG, if you go to feedback.stately.ai, and I think if you just do a search for SVG, you'll be able to find that and upvote it and let us know, because I know it's something we've spoken about, and we'd like to do that in the future, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and we're working on right now a lot of refactors with regard to the canvas that will make that possible, or at least it'll make it easier to do things like that. So there's no reason why we can't export to SVG. It's just hard right now. But yeah, if enough people shout about it, then it could definitely be a feature.
Yeah.
David, I was thinking about this. Do you see like most products have this developer mode where they show like grid lines and everything that a developer would be naturally interested in? You could do the same with path intersections, like a hidden developer mode that shows all of the paths, but this one was chosen by the algorithm.
I don't want to accidentally crash anyone's system, so there is a lot that goes into to rendering.
Maybe somebody needs to press like a sequence of Konami code or something to explicitly say, I want this.
We'll add that. Why not?
Essentially, Nick says, could all these annotations and descriptions be extracted to some kind of easy to read documentation? Sometimes state machine diagrams are so big to understand. Nick, you might have missed right at the beginning of this office hours. We did show export to Markdown, which I think would be a really good way around this. And you can get all of the descriptions in there, can't you, David?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I'll go ahead and share real quick again. So you see, we do have in here, this is AI generated, by the way. This is the git bisects process, and we have Markdown in here. And I have to remember if this works or not. I'm just going to press bold, like this is bold text. I could press Command I for italicize. I could even do a list like this. And so this kind of thing, like let's say that you actually wanted these. Now, this will not support annotations just yet. We're still working on a way to do that. And in fact, we've had some people ask us to basically have annotations be equivalents to comments in the code, which I think is a really good idea. But if we go and we export this as Markdown, copy this code, and let's say that I just put it in here, and I preview it.
I think you're not sharing the preview screen. You're just showing the particular
Let's share
tab.
that tab. Okay, so now I just copy and pasted that into here. And you could see that we have our Markdown just as is directly in here. So now this becomes documentation. And in the future, we'll have a command line for this, but right now you could just copy and paste. This documentation will stay up to date with your diagram, which is sort of what we're all about. It's like having everything be completely in sync. So
fabulous. I'm just going to go quickly back to Mo had a question earlier on that was about React. And I said that we would answer your question, but now I'm going to very cheekily say, actually, would you mind letting us know if you have questions like this that have code examples? It's generally a lot easier if you ask us in our Discord channel, because that way you can share your code examples with us and we can help you out with a bit more context there. And for folks who are not yet on our Discord, I will find the link for you. There we go. Discord.stately.ai. Very easy to remember that nowadays. And so if you go there and you just ask that question in our help channel, one of the team will be with you, or someone else. The community's fabulous on there and helps out a load. So we'll very happily answer your question in there. Oh, and Nick says, nice, I was writing documentation today and was just thinking about this, looking forward to using it. Excellent.
Yeah, and if you have any other suggestions for that, one of the things that I would love to do is instead of you writing descriptions, basically have our generated features help you out. And there's a lot of opportunities for doing that, for generating a description or summary of your entire state machine or of individual states or events from things like just explaining the state machine and providing alt text too, if you decide to export it as an image. There's a lot of ideas there. So just please let us know in the feedback section.
Before we get to the next section, Cedric said, if I understand well, Stately team didn't take vacations and work during the whole summer. No, I think everyone's been taking vacations on and off. It's just that this team is incredibly productive as well. So, next up, Kevin, you've got a huge number of things to share with us, haven't you? Should we start off with something that I previewed a little bit earlier, not necessarily on purpose, and that was that you can now lock machines.
Yeah, that sounds great, Laura. 1 second. We need a window, not a tab here. Okay. All right, so can everybody see my screen here?
Yeah, good.
So yeah, we're talking about locking machines. So since we're going to focus on that, we don't really need to go into the details of what you're looking at here. This is just simply a machine that represents sort of a strategy for metadata loading of a list and some lazy loading of complete data. But what's important is that I've put a lot of time into this machine, of course, with all the great colors, etc. And now I would like to be able to lock the machine. And this is actually a feature that was requested by some of our pro users. And this is a little bit different than other things that we already have. So for example, this is a feature where you'd be locking the machine on obviously a per machine basis. And it's something that's meant to be, perhaps like toggled on, toggled off at will, whenever you need to. It's not permanent, etc. So the reason, of course, that you might want to do it, as you can imagine, is because, well, first of all, you might want to just make sure that you yourself don't accidentally make edits or delete anything. And then furthermore, if you are working on a team, then this is another way to sort of prevent even other people with edit access, like editors, from accidentally, let's say, deleting something. And it's sort of the opposite. You can think of it as the opposite of a work in progress, right? You're sort of indicating like, this is something I actually want to take care of here. And then the other people could maybe fork it or ask you about it and say, hey, can I actually unlock this for a reason? So how do you do it? Well, you basically just choose the machine itself as opposed to selecting anything else. And if you go into the details,
could you
then you
zoom in a little bit on that corner,
yes.
Kevin, if possible?
Oh,
I think you might need to do browser zoom.
Yes.
If you do, yeah, there we go. Just so it's a bit easier to see. Yeah, a little bit more, maybe.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Yeah.
Fabulous. That's better.
Right, yeah, let's focus on this. So we have the panel and there is this little lock icon. It says lock machine. And of course right now it's unlocked. So when I click on it, then I don't know if you saw that quickly, but it sort of said it was locking. And now we have a lock indicator here. And you can see the tooltip as well. It says locked by Kevin Mays a few seconds ago. Obviously that will, remain accurate as time goes on. And the other thing is, well, so now let's say that if you notice here, I actually have this state that looks like it's an unreachable state. And so I want to delete it, but I actually can't delete it. So this is in read-only mode. So I can't make any changes. So what I could do is I could unlock it. Before I do that, I just want to show you that we also have the lock indicator here. So if I actually had a list of machines, then this would be, one of the machines that has the lock icon, whereas the others may or may not have that. And I can also now go and unlock it. Of course, I can go back to the panel here. sorry, I need to not select anything, but I can go back here and unlock. But to just demonstrate, I could also go into the stately menu. And from the stately menu under the machine, you will see that there's also an unlock machine here. So you can basically, it's like the three-way switch for the light bulb. You know, you can turn it on over here near the door, and you can turn it on, turn it off from the other place. And you know, at least you can see that the light is either on or off by looking at the top bar here. So, and yeah, in terms of like how to do it, that's pretty much it. So this is a pro feature, locking machines. And like I said, it basically gives you greater security and greater control over, you know, the editability of the machine. And, you know, it's something that we'd love your feedback on. You know, is it obvious when a machine is locked? Is it easy enough to switch it on and off? Is it convenient? So we'd love to hear more about that as we go on.
Just while you have the machines list as our focus of our attention right there, you haven't actually got any more machines in that project, but I think it's worth pointing out another very small improvement that happened this week is that now the machines in the list there are ordered alphabetically. And so that should hopefully make it easier for you to find your machines. There you go.
Aha, there we go.
Yeah,
look at that.
Fabulous.
Auto-updated. I wasn't even expecting it, but I did it.
So
that's great.
if you have 50 machines in a project, it should be easier to hunt them down. Of course, you can use the filter as well, but if you can't remember what you called it, you've got that alphabetical ordering to help you out. I love that John says that would make a great looking poster, Kevin. That's the thing that the editor is so beautiful now that you can hang state machines on your walls.
Yeah, but how do I decide between light mode and dark mode? Yeah. Put it on two different walls and turn the light switch on for one wall and turn off the other. So yeah, thanks. And by the way, we have also talked about the idea of expanding, you know, the sort possibilities for these long lists of machines in the future. So having the default be A to Z right now is just a step in that direction, but it's pretty convenient.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. If you have any particular type of sorting that you want to request, you know, you can go to feedback.stately.ai and let us know there. I think we have already got a request there for having sort options, but it would be good to know what you'd find useful as well. Next up, Kevin, you have another really cool feature that I got very excited about and sort of hinted at it last office hours, but you can actually show us now because it's live, isn't it?
I can, and I will show that it is live. So you've probably already noticed it with some of these other demos. But inside of the code panel where we have these different export options, you know, along with the ones that are in the dropdown like Mermaid and Markdown and Stories, etc. We also have these. We have these open in Code Sandbox and open in StackBlitz. And I'm actually going to demo this from another machine that I have over here, which is not actually in the production, but this is a feature that is already in production. And I'd also like to add that, you know, it is one of our free features, so everybody can actually already start to use this right now. But if you just want to hold on a second, I can show you how it works before you go off and do that. So this is a machine that I actually also had auto-generated with the generate flow. So I asked to create sort of like a flow for tournament gameplay, let's say. And I think it did a decent job. I did kind of, you know, tidy it up a little bit. And so let's suppose that I want to go here and I want to actually see it in one of these editors. So we have two things. First of all, some of you may remember we did sort of a proto demonstration of this type of feature a few months ago. But since then, there have been some advancements, of course, stately, but also even on the StackBlitz and the Code Sandbox side, some of their sandboxes and things are running much faster. So it's pretty interesting to look at this a few months later. So for example, we have all the code here, and then I can just click open in StackBlitz. And that's going to open up a StackBlitz. All right. And basically, so a few things. Quickly about the anatomy, you know, we have the machine here, which is actually the default file that's selected. So that is the exported code that you saw on the panel. And then because this was exported as a TypeScript project, you know, we also have this index.ts and everything you need to basically have this little bit of a demo app that's kind of up and running. And so what you can do is you see here that it actually indicates that this is V4. You could also export this as V5. I can show you that later. So this is the name of the machine. This is the current state. And these are the events. Now, there could be one or more events here that are possible. So I'll just start clicking in here. So let's say I start and I want to start registering people. And so now I can register any number of people, etc. But actually, you see, I can't actually click start. So, why is that? Well, I think that has to do with this context here. And so this is actually not like fully fleshed out as an app. But one of the things is that start is guarded by a guard, which is called like enough players to be registered or registered. So without going into the mechanics of that, let's just say that is actually true. So then at this point, I can actually do that. And now I can hit start. Okay, and then I can do my matchmaking and my start, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one thing you'll notice though is, okay, so if I hit win, okay, so that game is done. And if I hit continue, then this is completely done. So that's weird because the tournament only had one game. So what I can do though is, then I can start to flesh this out a little bit more because this is already a working app that's running in a CodeSandbox. So for example, I have this assign action that I specified in the studio. Now, I guess I wasn't advanced enough.
Could you zoom the code a little bit, Kevin? Just make it a bit easier for us to read.
Yeah, definitely want to do that. So if I had been a little bit more in sync with Farzad's demo, then I probably could have, done this assign action in the studio and exported it as a working thing. So sorry I didn't do that, but let's see. If I just do games completed, context, and then let's say this is our context, games completed +1. So every time we finish a game, we're going to say that another game has been completed. And then there's going to be inevitably a guard that's checking to see whether there's more matches that remain. So let's say context. Okay, so this is more matches remaining. So this is context. Game completed is less than context total games. So that should allow us to check for that. And we should be able to see some kind of activity going on here. So I'm going to just restart this. So total games 5, games completed. Let's start. Okay, register people, register. Now I'm going to start. We're doing matchmaking,
nice.
match. And then finally starting a game, flipping active. So let's say we have a win in the first game. So we have games completed is now incremented to 1. You can pause the tournament and resume. That's the AI doing its thing, So you can keep on saying win. So we have games completed 2. We can have a draw. We can have another draw, and we can finally have a win. And then when we go continue, now we've actually completed the tournament. It's a very arbitrary number of games being played, but you can see that it actually is a working demo in line with your context that you defined in the app in Stately Studio. So that's basically it. There is CodeSandbox here. what we could do is I guess we could switch to JavaScript if you like JavaScript. We could do D5. We could open the CodeSandbox. Let's see.
Always tends to take a bit longer in CodeSandbox. That's CodeSandbox, not us.
It does, but Okay, oh good, phew. There it is. It looks the same. So, or almost the same. And so of course, like I said, you can basically just click through and do everything you have. These are all JavaScript files, and the machine is here, and you can fill out your implementation as well. So one other thing that I guess I didn't show is that if you look down in the instructions here, sorry, it's kind of small, so I'll maybe go back to this one here. It says you can open the console and you can see state transitions from the created actor. So you could actually do, you could do actor.send in the console. Oh, in fact, I can show you this too. So we print out the state value and the actual full state and the next events. So every time you do that, and then like you said, like you saw here, you could actually do actor send. I guess we could just after this. So what's next here? Just click start. Oops, sorry. I guess I should have. Here, let's try that again. I should be able to do start. There we go. Okay, so you see that it's actually working from the console and moves the machine forward inside of the demo app. And I think that's about it. Yeah.
It's so cool.
That is exporting
it's so useful.
CodeSandbox and StackDex.
And that will help get you started so much more quickly as well, because you'll just be able to export that and get building on your app right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
one
Cedric
other-
says one step more to work with the product team. Perfect.
Yeah, and I love that because it really makes like just drawing these flowcharts become much more real, because even as a product manager, you could say like, hey, I want to demo this to you as if it were an actual app. And now we have a very easy way for you to do that.
Yeah. Just while I'm sharing the screen, I just wanted to tie back to the earlier demo, which had to do with the generation of the flows. As we mentioned, that's a pro feature, and one of the other features that we have is the version history, and those two are very tightly tied together, which I don't know if was mentioned. So, for example, when you actually create a flow, you'll see here it says show 8 autosave versions. So we actually do autosave versions behind the scenes. We both version the previous work just as a snapshot, so you don't lose it, you can go back to it. But then also we save a version where you can see here that it was like, generated by the AI flow, where it says generated 4 hours ago. Here's when it was generated. This was the pre-generation save. So all of this stuff is actually being kind of tightly integrated with your version control, so you can actually go back and spawn it off as its own machine, or you can just restore it, or whatever you want to do. So I just wanted to point that out while I'm still sharing the screen, and I can stop sharing the screen.
Fabulous. We've had so much in office hours this week. We've already passed an hour, but there's still just a couple more things that I just wanted to quickly share with you. And one of those is that David has added a fabulous new XState version 5 cheat sheet in the docs. It's in the sidebar in the V5 docs right at the top. So if you want to jump into V5 notes and quickly go straight there. And David, you've also been adding a lot of TypeScript sections to the V5 docs, haven't you?
Yeah. As me and Mateusz were working on just tightening up the types in V5, there's now a lot of options, or not options, but there's some straightforward ways for you to make the types a lot stronger in pretty much everything: events, context, guards, actions, delays, tags, input, output, actors, of course, like just so many things that you could really tighten up. And so now all of those are in the documentation. And also there's a nice quick little section of it in the cheat sheet that Laura just shared.
Excellent. And so you can find all of our docs at stately.ai/docs. Finally, I wanted to mention that a huge number of the team will be at React Alicante. I've put this at the top, didn't I? There we go. At the end of the month. So that is September 28th to 30th. And the team will actually be hanging out in Alicante afterwards. So if you are local to Alicante, or if you want to make the trip in order to get lots of stately and XState goodness in your life, be sure to join us. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, isn't it? And who's speaking there at React Alicante? Raise your hands. There we go. So you get to see David and Kevin speak. So that's going to be a really great conference. So make sure you join us there. Is there anything that we've missed, team? It's hard to believe that there possibly could be.
No, but we'll be sure to share more in our next office hours. By the way, Laura made an excellent video showing off some of our AI features, so definitely check it out on our Twitter.
Yeah, if you are watching us on YouTube right now, you'll be able to find that in one of our most recent videos, or under the Learn Stately playlist. It is called Generating Flows, and it's just a very quick little demo of how you can use that feature.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fabulous. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for sticking with us for all this time. Thank you for all your questions and your comments. All your feedback really helps us. You are helping us drive Stately along. You can join us again. I'm hoping we'll be back in soon. I was about to promise a couple of weeks, but I think we might be traveling then. But we will see you soon. Yeah, we will let you know. If you want to make sure that you are the first to find out about our office hours, if you subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, that's Stately AI. If you follow us on LinkedIn, you will be the first to find out. Those are the channels that we find it easiest to subscribe to things on. But if you also follow us on any of our social platforms, you can find us on Mastodon, you can find us on, as I already said, LinkedIn and Twitter. We're on Instagram. We'll make sure we post there. And of course, on our Discord, which is discord.stately.ai. Right, I've said too much. I've said plenty. We will catch you
Great.
all later. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.